Great. Let's get into it. 7 errors taught by Black Hebrew Israelites. Error number 1, the identity of true Israelites. So, and I'm not a scholar in their doctrine. Don't desire to be. That's not why I'm teaching this lesson. Essentially, this doctrine is designed to pit one group of people against a different group of people. I'll say it again. This doctrine is designed to pit one group of people against another group of people. Well, who's the one group of people? Well, the one group of people are the true Israelites, the ones that are evangelizing on the street corner, and their cohort, everybody that believes what they believe. That's the one group. Well, who's everybody else? Everybody else other than them. That's who everybody else is. Well, what are they called? Well, they refer to themselves as true Israelites, disciples, what have you, and then everybody else is Gentiles in their mind. Okay? Gentiles in their mind. The Luciferian religion is you can work your way into becoming God, because that's what the serpent taught the woman, and that she then, by example and by behavior, did to her husband. And they both followed Luciferian religion. So they used this verse in Deuteronomy, and here's what it says. Then I'll tell you what doctrine they teach. It says, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. And then they say, who else? And then they'll throw these words in. Documented, right? That's been documented, enslaved on ships, right? We're attacking what they teach, not the people, right? That statement, that position, that doctrine, that is the groundswell of their teaching method. Because they'll ask you, who else was enslaved on ships? Well, I'm about to tell you some people who were enslaved on ships, okay? I'm going to tell you. Got it? We're not talking about the transatlantic slave trade, which is, the people who were transported from Africa to different parts of the world, and mainly the United States for transatlantic. I'm giving you other instances so you're armed, so that you have in your awareness. Don't worry, you can study them on your own. I'm giving them to you so that you're equipped, right? So you're not deceived. Because the thing that keeps us from deception is understanding and knowledge, awareness, specifically when they're talking about these type of things. All right, so here we go. Here are 2 examples so you can arm yourself. Number 1, the early Islamic slave trade. That went on from the 7th to 9th centuries. Okay? The second one is the medieval period slave trade from the 9th to the 15th centuries, or from the 10th. I'm sorry, that's a typo. It should be from the 10th to the 15th centuries, not the 19th to the 15th. From the 10th to 15th centuries. This medieval slave trade is where the Vikings enslaved Slavic people, right? Slavic people. I'll say it again. The Vikings, who were Norwegian, enslaved Slavic people. The reason this is significant is because the word slave comes from the word Slavic.
Rise up, Bezalel, make we shine, bring forth the light, make it divine, we build with fire.
I want to give all the praises and the honor to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem, Recha HaKwadash, and double honors to the elder apostles and the bishops of Great Millstone. Honors as well to your elders, your brother and your fellow believers of this truth. Shalom to you, few sisters. Shalom to the elect. So anyway, I want to go in on this guy here. I don't know if he's a Jake or a Elam. I don't know what the hell he is. Esau with some complexion, or just Jake. I don't know. But I hear this argument a lot, so it's real easy to condemn this argument, or let me say expose this argument as fraudulent, It's one simple thing. Let's go to Deuteronomy 28:15. It's one simple thing. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and do all his commandments. Well, who was given the commandments? Yes, the Israelites. And his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. So we're going to drop right on down to the main point, Deuteronomy 28:68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way where I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there thou shalt be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondmen, women, and no one shall buy you. And when you go into the older Bibles, and when you even look this word up, it actually means redeem you. When it says no one shall buy you, right? And in fact, just for camera edification, I'll look that up real quick. Let's go to Deuteronomy 28:68, just for camera edification. We can go into the older Bibles and it'll say no one shall redeem you, but I'm not going to do that for the sake of the video. And no man shall buy you, 870:69. It says here to acquire, like when this store might say redeem your purchases. No man shall buy you, possess you, right? Now what they're saying is, okay, it says no man shall buy you, but you were bought, because these people like this, they have, something going on with their brains, and they can't see, they don't look up anything. It says to get or acquire, to obtain. This is all in the same number one definition, right? It says originally created, redeeming his people, possessive. So this is what this means. To buy goes back to Old English as redeem. And of course with transliterations and translations, they'll take one word, and then if you look at any etymology of a word, they'll say, oh, from the 13th century, 14th, 15th century. Then they'll say the 17th century or the 18th century or the 19th century. This is where you get all these definitions from. To be brought. By really going back meant to redeem you. In fact, let's go to an older Bible. Let me see if I can find it. It'll take me forever to get the other one, so let me just real quick. This Bible to 1382 and Deuteronomy 28, and let's go to 68th verse. This is what it says. Now, even in some translations of this Bible, they would change wording to try to make it more understandable. No, I want the raw part of it, right? It says, the Lord shall lay these by ships in Egypt, which Exodus 20:2 says, I have brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, right? By the way which he said to thee, thou shalt see it no more. There thou shalt be sold, it says sealed, to thine enemies, to servitors and handmaids, and none shall be that shall deliver thee. And then that's when they get that none shall buy you is another word for deliver thee. Yeah, these Christians and these theologians, they're just lost. And the only reason why they learn anything, because we go look up things and prove things according to what we say. So let's go on back to Deuteronomy 28. Now we're going to pick some things out of here to prove and see if this is the case. Therefore thou shalt serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger and thirst and nakedness and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he destroy thee. Now, the Christians will look into this, because when you go into these commentators, they'll say they look past it. A lot of this stuff was written right after the slave trade actually ended, or it was still going on a little bit. So they wasn't going to look and say, wait a minute, Deuteronomy 28:68, this looks like the Hebrew Israelites. So we know through time curses continued, and we're going to prove that. Now they'll say this happened in Babylon, but let's go to Deuteronomy 28:56, because this is what I just found out the other day. I did a video on the tender and delicate woman among you, which would not venture to set her sole or her foot on the ground for delicateness and tenderness. Her eyes shall be evil toward her husband and toward her bosom and toward her son and toward her daughter. Right? And the commentators, scholars, went into this being what happened in 70 AD. But let's go further. We see here, I'm going to read a little commentary. It says, not in order to escape the infamy of the action, but lest others should have share with her. In the siege of straightness, this was fulfilled about 600 years after the time of Moses among the Israelites, when Samaria was besieged by the king of Syria, and the two women agreed together, right, the one to give up her son to be boiled and eaten that day. And the other one, you know, if you read the story, when it was time for the other one, child, she wouldn't do it because she got some nourishment, or she ate something on her stomach. And the other to deliver her son up to be dressed and eaten the next, and one of them eaten accordingly. It was fulfilled again about 900 years after Moses in the siege of Jerusalem, before the Babylonian captivity. Right? This is what it says. And again, it was fulfilled about 1,500 years after Moses in the siege of Jerusalem by Titus. So you're seeing that even scholars are saying that there's perpetual judgments over and over again. So if we say in Deuteronomy 28 and 68, let me see if I can go to the 68th verse. So we say that this was the siege of Titus, right? In Egypt, it says, referring to what Deuteronomy 17, this was also illustrated in the bishops, illustrated by the bishop. They had come out of Egypt triumphant and carried into their ships, that they might be carried into their ships into Tyrrhenian or Sidon for merchants, or by the Romans who had fleet of Mediterranean. So you get the point. As a lot of them say it was fulfilled in 70 AD, so forth and so on. You have something called filled, and then you have a fulfillment. They really shouldn't say fulfillment, because the Messiah isn't finished. You can fulfill a particular part in time, but the Messiah is still coming back again, so he hasn't finished, right? So there's a fulfillment and then there's a finish. So you still see that these things have happened. Let's say it happened in the time of 70 AD and in the Romans, which the Romans did supposedly, if I'm not mistaken, did have ships, but coming from Jerusalem, the Jews was carried along the coastline. That's what I read. They were carried along the coastline. And if let's say that was the case, could this not have still happened in 70 AD, as we read Deuteronomy 28:56? How it gave the order of Israelites, things being fulfilled. See, the Lord's judgment is judgment. We're still under curses until he returns. So when the Messiah died, the curses wasn't done away with. That was only, like a lot of people say, oh, he died, the laws were fulfilled, everything was done. No. His blood covers us while we're here now for things we can't keep. But at the end of the day, the ultimate goal is to get to the kingdom of the Father, which is set up under the house of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, under the house of David. That's the ultimate goal. But all these curses, they're still rolling. There's still women killing their children, eyes being evil, right? We're still under perpetual judgment as a people. Look at us. So this is why we identify. So when we go back to Deuteronomy 28, and let's go to 64, let's prove this further. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from one end of the earth even into the other. and there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither nor thy father have known, even wood and stone. So why this situation should, this man should be muted, right? His opinion should be muted, because this is talking about the Israelites. This is not talking about the Barbary slave trade, the Indian Ocean slave trade, the Sub-Saharan slave trade. In fact, we were involved in them too. Especially, who do you think those so-called Muslims had in slavery? The Barbers, who they had in slavery. And what did we do? We converted over to their religion. Just like we converted over to Christianity and Roman Catholicism, Islam, Buddhism, and every goddamn other religion on the planet. Let's go here. The enslaved victims of the Barbary slave trade, right? This is what I trip about these people who try to separate the transatlantic slave trade and make it seem like it's no big deal because there was other slave trades. See, this was slave torture, by the way. This wasn't just a regular slave trade. And secondly, when you read Deuteronomy 28, it was strictly talking about the children of Israel. That's why I read Deuteronomy 28 and 15. The yokes of iron on their neck and be scattered on ships. These other so-called slave trades, as they say, involved other people. But when you look at Europeans, not all Europeans were white either. Just like not all Americans were white. See, people get this mixed up. Or not all Greeks. Europeans from coastal regions, particularly from Spain, Italy, France, and Portugal. Where do you think the first slave ships came from? They came from Spain, France, Italy, Portugal, right? Spain and Portugal mainly. People from the Mediterranean islands of Sardinia, Corsica, and Sicily. Where the hell do you think the Israelites were, man? Northern Europeans. And this is the racial part of it. Everybody think because you're Caucasian, you're European. No, the only reason why you're called Caucasian is because you were up in the mountains. Even in Europe, Russia. You know what I'm saying? Northern Europe, Northern Europeans, including English, Irish. Yeah, some of the Irish was Israelites too, right? They even called a lot of them the Black Irish. Scandinavians captured during raids. Sub-Saharan Africans. Yeah, we was scattered all through Africa as well, through the smaller numbers than the Atlantic slave trade, other than North Africans and the Middle Easterners. Right? Barbary corsairs, pirates operating from North Africa ports particularly sailed to Tunis, Algiers, and Tripoli. So at the end of the day, this is what transpired into the transatlantic slave trade. Now, out of all these so-called trades, which trade do you think was the most horrendous and atrocious? And who would have the curse? When you're dealing with the Lord's curses, like he gave David the curses, the chance to choose one of the curses, and he thought the Lord was going to be more, let me say, lenient towards him, and he damn near wiped Israel out. Well, what kind of curses would the children of Israel be when you're dealing with any kind of curse? What would happen in those curses? Every time the Lord cursed the children of Israel, it was catastrophic. So you can't exclude the transatlantic slave trade. In fact, you would have to say that is more susceptible, or let me say more than likely, the curse that the Lord has put on the children of Israel. Not only was it just being brought over in ships, but it was being tortured on those ships, having our women separated, raped on those ships, men defecated on each other on those ships. Not that other slave trades wasn't harsh because on ships. You're always going to have, especially in those days, horrible conditions. But when Esau got a hold of slavery and they took the children of Israel and scattered from one end of the earth even into the other, well, his argument is mute. What else can you say? When you start talking about Deuteronomy 28, we know this is talking about the children of Israel. So if you're saying all those other slave trades was other nations, they don't even matter, because that has nothing to do with the slavery of the children of Israel, period. Let's go on. Isaiah 22:18. It says, he will surely violently turn and toss thee like a ball into a large country. Who the hell is that? Again, when we think of the curse of the Lord, we think of something highly catastrophic, period. The Lord has never been so much altogether lenient on when he curses you, especially as a nation. There shalt thou die, and there thy chariots of glory shall be ashamed of the Lord's house. Yeah, we see these curses. And what happened to us, and a reflection of what happened to us that's still going on today, this is how we know who the true children of Israel truly are. Joel 3:1. I will also gather all nations, 3:2, and bring them down to the valley of Yahweh's judgment, and will plead with them there for my people, my heritage Israel, whom they scattered amongst the nations and part of my land. Yeah, the barbers had something to do with that too. They had other slave trades had something to do with that. But what was in common with all those slave trades? They were still Israelites, meaning none of us escaped. And even before the scattering of coming over here, we were scattered over there. Come on, man. That's why James 12 says to the 12 tribes that are scattered abroad. The Israelites continued being scattered. This is why we're called Gentiles as well. It says, and they have cast lots for my people, and given a boy for an harlot, and sold a girl for wine that they might drink. Yeah, who else has that happened to? I'm sure it might have happened on some small scale level to other people, but this is mentioned here. Why? Because it's the children of Israel, and this is what you can't get away from. And this is the whole point that you can't get away from. I'm going to read a little commentary from Deuteronomy 20:68. I had some others, but I lost it. I'll just read a little of this. This says, these events compared, and why don't they go into the Holy Land and tell them people the same thing? Seems like they're the only ones allowed to say, well, we're the people of God chosen. You can convert, but you must come under us. Yeah, these cone heads don't say nothing about that. These events compared with the favor shown to Israel in ancient time and with the prophecies about them should not only excite astonishment, but turn unto us for the testimony of showing us the truth of scriptures. And when the other prophecies or other conversations of the Messiah, Yahushua, shall come to pass, the whole will be a sign of the wonder of the nations of the earth, and the forerunner of a general spread of true Christianity. The fulfillment of these prophecies upon the Jewish nation, well, we know what nation, delivered more than 3,000 years ago, shows Moses spake by the Spirit of God, who not only foresees the ruined sinners, but warns it, that they may prevent it to be true in timely repentance, else left without excuse. Let me go on down here. The destruction threatened is, as is described, they have indeed been plucked from off the land, not only by the Babylonian captivity, and when Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans, but afterwards when they were forbidden to set foot in Jerusalem. So we see that it's another one on here that talks about how it continually happens. These judgments happen over and over again. It says here that they come out of Egypt as a triumph, but now they should return thither as slaves. They had walked through the sea as dry land as they are coming out, but now they should be carried thither in ships. And anybody looks at the maps will see that Jerusalem and those locations, when you read a lot of these commentators, they'll tell you they was marched on land, but the ships that, the Romans and various others used was for, other situations, and because they carried trade, import, export, slaves as well, right? So at the end of the day, we see these things happen time and time again. But we know that when it comes to this transatlantic slave trade, these people are writing this off as something minute. It was just something the devil did. So if something the devil did, and you all people of God, you would know that the Lord was against these people for him to put them through this kind of trauma. You should know that. Anyway, that's all I have on that. Shalom.